India, a subcontinent rich in culture, history, contrasts, and diversity. Nearly 24 official languages, 6 main religions, and a lot of people. 1.3 billion, more than 17% of the world's population, all living on 1/3 the area of the United States. And every 5 years, India puts on what is often described as the greatest show on earth.
I love my India.
No, it's not a Bollywood movie. It's India's general election.
In the upcoming 2019 election, nearly 900 million Indians 18 years and older will be eligible to vote. That's more ballots cast than the last 7 U.S. presidential elections combined. In India's 2014 election, there were more than 8,000 candidates from over 450 political parties vying for only 543 seats in the lower house of parliament. This is known as the Lok Sabha, or the House of the People. An additional 2 seats are nominated by the president from the Anglo-Indian community, or those of mixed Indian and European descent. When you break down the numbers, it means on average, each MP represents 1.5 million voters. Compare that to the much smaller population in the UK, which has 650 seats in parliament, meaning each MP represents about 72,000 registered voters. The constituencies in each of India's 29 states and 7 union territories are based on how populated the region is. The bigger the state, the more seats it has. For example, Uttar Pradesh, India's most populated state with 228.9 million people, has 80 constituencies. In fact, UP has an even higher population than all of Brazil. India's federal electoral model follows a first-past-the-post system, and whichever party wins the majority of seats gets to choose the prime minister. So setting aside the quality of India's democracy and the arguments about misrepresentation in a country marred with social, economic, and political issues, how is such a massive election logistically organized? Enter the Election Commission of India. Under India's constitution, the independent body is given absolute power to supervise, direct, control, and conduct the process.
We work on the principle of Murphy's Law, that anything which can go wrong will go wrong, and we have to be prepared for it. So that's why we have, as I said, Plan B, C, and D. So we have been doing it for the last 70 years.
India's democracy came into existence in 1951, with its first general election allowing every citizen, regardless of gender, class, religion, occupation, wealth, or level of literacy, to vote.
The poor people and illiterate people, they are also people, and they're equal citizens. So that's why we decided from day one that we will not leave any single person out.
Election arrangements begin a year in advance, updating the electoral rolls, preparing the 3.6 million electronic voting machines, and hiring 11 million government workers to take on election duty, including 2.5 million security personnel.
The people staffing the polling booth tend to be civil servants employed in other jobs. So, it could be a teacher, it could be a mailman, it could be someone from, the state bureaucracy. And during the elections, all of these people are taking a leave from their work and are being reassigned for a few days to staffing a polling booth.
And setting up the 1 million voting booths is no easy feat. According to election guidelines, there must be a polling station no farther than 2 kilometers of every voter across the country, from the mountain villages of Himachal Pradesh, the deserts of Rajasthan, to the beach towns of Kerala, the rainforests of Assam, and everything in between, which means all modes of transportation, including elephants, camels, boats, and planes, are deployed to reach even the most remote areas of the country. In fact, a polling booth is set up in the middle of a dense, isolated jungle in Gujarat every election year, so a sole voter, a temple priest, can contribute to his country's political process. This helps with voter turnout. In 2014, it was over 66%.
In India, there's no election day. Instead, it's an election month. Voting takes place in multiple phases across the regions.
This allows for election and security resources to move around the country and gives the Commission better control of what's going on at each polling station. Security issues like physical threats and bribes are just some of the challenges the Commission faces during the elections.
Whether we're talking about the beginning of the insurgency in Kashmir Valley in the late 1980s, where there were pretty solid allegations of ballot stuffing or ballot rigging, whether we think about the old feudal wars that took place in Bihar when upper caste landlord armies forcibly either prevented or people from voting or coerced them into voting in particular ways, practices that were described as booth capture.
But experts say these types of cases are becoming less and less frequent thanks to the checks and balances applied by the Commission.
We make what is called vulnerability map for every village, every polling station area. Who are the people, the criminals in the area? Has there been a history of booth capturing in the past? We flag it as a suspicious area.
Something else that helps run the election: electronic voting machines.
When we had elections through the ballot paper, there used to be booth capturing. It was far more susceptible to manipulation. The electronic voting machines, even though they've become a contentious issue as far as some political parties are concerned, are really as foolproof as they can be.
One by one, citizens line up to cast their ballot. Their left index finger is marked with ink to help prevent electoral fraud. The 2019 election will be staggered over 7 phases, as long as a new Indian government is in place by the last week of May. Results are only announced once all votes are cast.
Of course, this is, in an attempt at sort of not spoiling or sort of creating some sort of bias for people who vote later on in other states. So there's a lot of suspense. You have to be really patient.
And counting those votes is another big task on its own, with 4,000 counting centers set up across the country.
The counting is done after 3 to 4 days of the last day of the poll. That is to keep a margin for a possible repoll. Now, where we keep our machines, the people sleep outside to keep a vigil around the clock. By lunchtime, the country, the nation knows the results.
When it's all said and done, organizers admit it's far from perfect, but it's currently how they get almost 1 billion people to the polls.
Thanks for watching Global News. If you enjoyed what you saw, like the video. You could also hit the subscribe button to get all the latest international news and trending videos.